Hello, this is Captain Poodle speaking. Are you ready to find love?
Yes, ahoy, matey.
Love. Exciting and new. Go online. They're catfishing you.
Shocker.
Fiancé.
Soon you'll be flying to parts unknown.
90-day fiancé.
Marrying someone you only met on your phone.
Be they French or Chinese, a brand new K1 visa's the key.
Ooh, the key to what, Poodle?
To love. It's 90-day gate. Let's love.
You guys, we are here. This is a very, very exciting day. This is our first kind of interview where we're probably not going to talk about penises.
Probably not.
We can if you want.
Unless that voice you guys might recognize. This is Theresa Caputo, the Long Island medium.
In the house.
Yay!
I know. Y'all, this is...
I'm so excited.
We're very excited.
You're the most famous person we've ever talked to.
Oh my God.
Unless
I don't even think I'm famous.
And that doesn't even count the time that Jake kind of did something dirty with that guy, the gay guy in Star Trek.
No. Yeah, he wouldn't even be interviewed by me.
But thank you for being here.
Thank
That's
you so much.
hilarious.
We're here to talk about a couple things. One of the reasons we're talking to you is we're on the same network. You have a new podcast.
Mm-hmm.
We're on Acast. So are you. You have a new podcast called Hey Spirit that is out. And
I just, every time I would say, I would be horrible. I'd be like, hey, Spirit. Hey, girl. Hey, Spirit. Every time.
What do you think about podcasting? You're new to it. What do you think?
I'm so new to it. It's weird, but it's not like I find myself in today's world, like I contradict myself because it's so different, but yet it's so normal for me because I still am able to deliver healing messages from the other side. So I'm able to see the people.
Yeah.
You know, years ago, long before Long Island Medium, I used to do phone readings, and I loved it because Spirit would like have me describe things and talk about things. And now it's like I get to see people, so it's still, and to feel that emotion, like I literally feel like you guys are like sitting closer than 6 feet apart from me right now. Which I don't think is legal, but in the podcast world, completely legal.
Yeah, we basically potted up because we have to do our show. Otherwise, we would never. We do our show remotely a lot, but
we live close. So we just it was easier for us.
Yeah, and do you find that too? Podcasts, even though you're talking to listeners, there's this real intimacy that happens when you're listening through someone on your earbuds. That our listeners say, I feel like you're our best friends because it's a very intimate relationship, very different than TV sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I found that myself. And, you know, listening to podcasts and listening to my own, because I don't listen to it before they are, just like Long Island Medium. But the thing that I love about Hey Spirit, because I feel like people might be able to feel like what it's like for me, or even for that person receiving the messages, because you're not watching.
Yeah.
You're listening to someone's emotion. And for me, when I channel Spirit, I don't see things the way that we see here in the physical world. It's more of a feeling. So to me, I almost feel like it's almost like a virtual roller coaster that Spirit kind of takes us on, you know, because you're really feeling it yourself. You're able to connect with some of these messages. And it's just amazing on how still through technology. And I say, thank God through this pandemic. You know, this is one of the things that came out of this silver lining, you know, of this pandemic, is that we found a new way to stay connected. And like you said, to have that intimacy.
Right.
which
It
is
is, yeah, it
great.
is interesting how I think we were kind of going in this way of everybody saying, I hate social media, technology is going, and now
It's
we
our
have such a
lifeline.
gratitude for it, because
Right.
gratitude is everything, you know?
Yes. And, for me, like I guess because everyone still knows I still live next door to where I grew up. I still live next door to my parents. I say, talk about separation anxiety. I'm 53. I still live next door to my parents. But I travel for the past 10 years. I've been traveling so much, but I always made it a point to, when I was home, I was home. It was like the weekends. It was like open door policy, friends, family, always had barbecues and get-togethers because I was away so much and I never felt like I missed out on anything. Yeah. And with this pandemic, it kind of brought things to a completely different level. And I think for most people realized, oh, wow, I got caught up in my own stuff, you know?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, definitely, for sure.
It definitely brings us back to, one of my friends said, I don't know if it's Mother Nature or some kind of higher thing, but it's saying you guys need to come back to your connections.
Oh, I think for sure.
Yeah. It just tells us either from what the earth has been through or what our relationships are. And it says, here, y'all need to get back to square one. And that's kind of what it felt like.
Basics. Yeah. Back to basics. But you're right. It's interesting about the podcast where it's a different type of connection, because people will say to me watching Long Island Medium, they're like, oh, I feel like you're right in our living room, like you're in our living room every Sunday night. But now it's like, it's just so different. You pop in earbuds and you're cleaning the house and you're doing your chores, or, after a meditation, like to listen to a podcast. I don't know. It's just, I never thought that would be me. Never thought in a million years I'd have a podcast. But, and I think that's the great thing. We always learn and grow. And through this pandemic, people really got to do a lot of soul searching. Yeah.
Which that kind of brings me, you even talked about this in one of your episodes, but what has it been like for you with your work and the podcast especially you live close to New York City, and so many people have lost loved ones and in this pandemic, and how has it affected your work?
Well, it has affected my work. I don't see people in person, and then I realized I'm able to read people all over the world. Yeah. So that's the amazing thing about the podcast, is that there were people in Australia, Korea. People never thought, or even just people within the United States would never think maybe they could see me at a live show. But then to have that one-on-one experience. And the thing that I love is that every time we, get someone, they go, I thought it was a spam email. Because why would I get picked?
Yeah. Right.
And I there's a part of me that I love that. I just love giving back. I love doing amazing things for people. And the podcast is it's just taking things to a completely different level. Listen, I it's the same, but it's not the same. I miss that physical connection. But we just got done filming Long Island Medium, and we were able to do some readings in person, with masks and so on and so forth. But over Zoom, it's just, it's fantastic. And to hear the emotion when you're listening to the podcast, and to hear that emotion, or even when there's silence. I think that's the thing that gets me when I listen to the podcast. And because at the moment I'm in it, I'm living it, I'm in it. So when I listen to Hey Spirit, I'm listening as a listener. Yeah. And you're hearing all these things, there's this emotion, and then all of a sudden there's this dead silence. And it just kind of grabs you for a second. And then that's where I think people really find that connection, because then you go through your own emotions of like, oh my God, what is going to happen next?
It's a full silence though, because that's just them, that's their mind spinning. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's not like watching it on TV where you hear silence, but then you're watching them. Maybe they're grabbing a tissue or they're crying, or right. It's just like there's nothing.
Yeah. Can we talk about? I read a little bit about. You were talking about your childhood, that you always knew this. You didn't call it spirit until later. That people were talking to you. And you felt very different. You felt strange. You're like, is something wrong with me? Yeah. And as soon as you said that, I thought that's a lot of LGBT people feel that their whole lives. And I feel like there's it's so interesting. You feel different because you're not like everybody else.
Right. But like I say, who decided what is normal?
Yeah.
Who decide? And for me, as a practicing Catholic, I struggled with that for so long, my gift and feeling different. And thank God, I mean, I come from a very spiritual, but also faithful family. And I would literally say to my mom, be like, I don't know, I feel different than everyone else. I don't belong here. And my mom would be like, well, you're not adopted. So there's no reason why you should feel that way. And no one like ever made a big deal about the things that I would say. I was always encouraged to, always stay in touch with my feelings and to talk about them. Yeah. And until I realized, and here I was, late in my 20s. I had 2 children. My ex-husband had just survived a brain tumor.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. And here we are. I didn't feel complete until I embraced my gift. That is when my soul felt complete. And that has always been my biggest message to people. You have to love and honor and respect yourself the way God intended.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's often the thing the thing that we think holds us back is actually the thing that propels us forward.
It's a superpower.
Yes. Yeah.
It really does.
And I believe we all have special gifts. We all have special abilities, no matter what it is. Is it someone feeling more comfortable in themselves of, being gay, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whatever it is, a certain type of job. I said, I don't think people have children and go, oh, I can't wait till my child grows up and talks to dead people. I don't think that's,
and no one in your family, your extended, no one had, I guess, the gift, so to speak. Was it just you?
No. So this is my first explanation about when people ask about gifts. I believe each and every one of us has the ability to connect with our own departed loved ones. And I love when people say, well, I don't connect with my grandfather. I don't connect with my grandmother. And then they start to tell me stories of, well, there was one time I smelled her cologne, my grandfather's cologne, or I had a dream of my grandmother. I'm like, that's a spiritual experience. Like that was a visitation. Like that's it. You're connected. So you have that bond that can never be broken. What I have, and some other people, they're able to connect with everyone's departed loved ones, be able to feel and sense things. So it's just a different level. My daughter tends to have a little bit more, is more like me, where she can pick up things from the departed. My son is just very, very intuitive.
Yeah.
My mom as well, like she's extremely intuitive, picks up things. My grandmother used to soul travel where her soul, she would do that, and I'm like, no, soul, you stay in this body. Like you get back in there. Don't be pulling that shit with me.
You're like, I didn't fix my hair for nothing. Although
that's right.
I'm a little happy, but also not happy you said that because Poodle, Jake was in a coma for 3 weeks years ago.
I was in a coma about 5 years ago. I was in a coma for 3 weeks, and I woke up. First of all, I had these very lucid dreams, and I've always been kind of, I would call it witchy or intuitive. And I have actually, my great grandmother was.
I was just going to ask you about the grandparents. Yeah,
a root worker, basically in Appalachia. And it's
so
always,
ever since then, I'll say something. He'll say, "Well, I can feel it." And I'm like, "Oh gosh!"
And so I'm always saying, and it is kind of weird, like a little combination. And what being, it just gave me a little bit more. I notice things more now. I notice things more, and I kind of respect what the universe wants to tell me.
Right.
A lot more.
And do you talk about that a lot on the podcast on Hey Spirit, of how kind of us everyday people
you can find your own,
can kind of cultivate this in ourselves?
Absolutely. And I actually have a hotline where people can call in and leave questions, and we have them on as guests, because that's the other thing that I love about the podcast. It's where it's so intimate, because now I want to hear from them. I find it so weird. I don't want to say fans, because it's like I feel like they're my friends. I feel like they're just followers.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how to refer to them. So I always just say people that support what I do, give them an opportunity. And it's amazing on how many people have the gift that I have, and they want they have questions, and can you help me? Can you answer this? And, and unfortunately, a lot of it, I try to tell people, you have to learn on your own. Like you can have that guidance and safety net of people to go to, but it's a type of thing where, because you have to know how you connect. You have to know, like, I can explain things on how I see and feel how I get things, but it might be different from you. And it doesn't mean that it's wrong. Everyone is just different.
Right. Y'all, we're going to take just a quick break, and we're going to be right back with Theresa.
I think what I was kind of thinking about you being able to, as you said, see dead people. What about your own family? Have you ever had had a spirit saying from your own specific family? Because I know you probably are more, because we people who are intuitive, you can be intuitive about other people, but when it comes to you, it's a lot harder because we're more guarded.
So here's the thing that I would say. I go, my family gets screwed out of messages all the time. But this is the reason. And I don't want to make this too lengthy, but people have to understand how I read. It's actually harder for me to read someone if I know something about them.
Yeah.
Right? Because and let's face it, there's only so many different ways that people can die, only so many different bonds and relationships that we share with people. So that's why, like, through all my readings, Spirit has to validate it with something completely unique to the person that they're speaking to. Yeah. So, like, with my own family members, if I feel something, I'm like, oh, did I remember that? Were we just talking about that? Right? But when I'm working and I don't know the person, it's like, this is what they're showing me. I don't know what this is. So that's why I say it's harder. But I always say things anyway, But it's hard to channel your own loved ones. And, and I really don't dream of my loved ones. I say that because a lot of people think that if they're not dreaming of their loved ones, that they're not with them, or if they're not seeing butterflies, and I try to say, listen, the way that you connect, it's not going to be the same. Because one of the reasons why Spirit gives different signs and symbols to even different people and members in the family is because it promotes conversation. A lot of people don't know how to bring up or talk about the departed loved ones. Yeah. And especially if they die tragically, or if they're afraid they're not at peace. So that's why Spirit kind of does that. But I remember specifically, I only lost my grandmother about 11 years ago. So I was very fortunate to have my grandparents. I was well into my 40s. And I remember I was away on tour, and I felt this thing. I had this dream. She was crying. I was in her kitchen, and we were having breakfast, and because that was always my favorite spot with her to have breakfast. And she was crying, and she was like, I was like, why are you crying? And she says, well, it's just hard to say goodbye. Yeah. And she said, let's kind of leave together. And, we had this little conversation. I came to find out later on in the day that my mom said that they just found someone to purchase the home.
Wow.
Yeah. So when I never dreamt of her again. I feel her all the time. I know when she's around, but I've never really dreamt, but it was that one time. And I think a lot of us in the family, we were having a hard time with selling the home. My grandparents were the original owners. They were the only ones that lived there. And, it was hard, but it was the right thing to do at the time. So I cherish that because we all needed that at that time.
It's so interesting you say that, because I still have dreams about my grandmother's house. And we sold it, and I was very upset too, because that's where she kept me.
I've never shared that story with anybody. A lot of people don't know about that.
Oh yeah. She kept me every day after school, and that's a house I remember almost living in.
And mind you, that house was only sold 6 years ago, because my grandfather, we sold the house after my grandfather had passed. So it's not like this house. So, and I always say but this is what happens with people that I know. If we're not doing a quote unquote formal reading, Spirit always has me say things that touches someone in a special way.
Yeah, no, I believe it. I'm a believer.
Oh, I am too.
As far as kind of piggybacking on what you just said, you've written a lot about grief. You just wrote a book called Good Morning, and especially what we're going with now. Can you talk about in your opinion, how grief can be healing and how, and for you, it's what you're using to make people feel better and a way to approach grieving that is not a way that is like, oh, woe is me.
Grief is very much seen. That's something I do in my work. It's people think of it as a negative thing, and it is not.
Be very healing and positive.
So what happened was it was about 5 years ago, I wrote Good Grief. Because what I was hearing through my readings were people were like, well, I'm not feeling this. I'm not grieving this way. I should be doing that. So I wrote about on how grief is different for everyone. They talk about these stages of grief. You might go through all of them. You might go through them in that order, but you might not hit any of those grief processes at all. And it's okay. So it's almost like that book gave people permission to grieve. Good morning was, I noticed through 2 years ago, I was pushed to write this book, but I was going through my own things. I was going through my divorce, and I didn't feel it was the right time to write the book. So I just kept a lot of notes of things that Spirit would get my attention. And what I was noticing in the readings was Spirit would say, look, you can't even begin to grieve the loss of me because you didn't grieve this loss of this argument that you had. You're still mourning, and you didn't grieve the loss of that job, whatever it may be. And so I started thinking about it and realizing that a loss is a loss. The greatest loss is the loss of a loved one. And people would say to me, but why am I handling my dog's passing more than it's hitting me harder than my grandparents? Well, that might have just been the last straw that you could have handled, and where maybe you had to make the decision to put your dog down. So I started noticing these things, and, Spirit was saying we grieve and mourn every day of our life. Oh. And if we deal with these things on a daily basis and recognize them, recognize what we're grieving, what we've lost, because a loss is a loss. And basically we grieve what once was.
Totally.
Yes.
And insanity that I wrote this book over 2 years ago, and it came out this fall right after this pandemic, where I think a lot of people have lost something.
Yeah.
Regardless of what it is, freedom. Yeah. And unfortunately, a lot of people passed during this pandemic, very powerful and parallel to 9/11 in a similarity. Yes. And I kind of use that because I don't know if it's because I'm from New York and it still has affected, and I see how the long-term effect of 9/11 has continued to affect people in my own family. But where people didn't know what happened to their loved ones, they couldn't be there with them, could not recover their bodies, and were afraid that their souls weren't at peace. If they were alone, if they were afraid, if they were scared, same thing with this pandemic. But now it's not just New York, it's worldwide.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting what you said, a loss is a loss, and not to compare either different types of your own grief or someone else's grief. Right. Because you hear, oh, so-and-so's mother just passed from COVID. Oh, I feel bad now about my own grief. I'm also a musician, and I had lots of gigs that just went away. And a lot of times we're trying to rank our own grief. And you're so right. A loss is a loss.
Well, stages of grief are a wonderful thing, but they're also, I think, a hindrance, because I think a lot of us think once you go through this quote unquote stages of grief, you're done.
Right. And that's not true.
You're never done with grief.
Right. No, I say to my clients, you will grieve the loss of your loved ones for the rest of your life here in the physical world. The thing that happens is the healing process. And that's something completely different. Yeah. To be able, you could still be sad and cry every day, but you're getting out of bed in the morning. You're going to work.
As Oprah said, that's an aha. I want people to like really, that grief and healing are two separate things that are not, they're connected, but I just want people to hear that. That's a great thing to say.
It's so important. And I think people also have to realize, like, it's okay not to be okay. I think that was the other thing that I stressed in this book too. Like, it's okay. We're all going to have these days. And with these everyday losses that you had, I wrote about something, and someone who interviewed me about the book said, I never thought about grieving an argument. And then they thought about it, or even a friendship.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh my God, I did the work on it and I feel so much lighter. I feel better. So I tell people, whatever that loss is, just go through it, take what you've learned from it, and release anything else negative that was attached to it.
Yeah.
But you always learn something from it, whatever it is. And now maybe you'll be a better friend. Maybe the next time you have an argument, you won't take it to that next level.
Yeah. That's great.
Now, so with you, like in this, with dealing kind of like now that your grandparents and and you're very close to your grandmother, do they ever, I think a lot of times people think of, and maybe it is, that with talking to a spirit or talking to people that have passed, that usually it's always kind of, I don't want to say positive, negative, but always like kind of happier. But sometimes, like, do you ever find like you're parenting your kid and your grandma saying, don't say that to her. Don't do that. Because I tell you, my grandma Hazel would judge my parenting experience if I was a kid. So I'm just saying, I feel like sometimes, did they ever come for you, Theresa?
No, they don't.
Oh, that's good. That's good. You're lucky. You're lucky.
That's a good thing, because that way, so when spirit reaches out, it's usually entreating something. It's not saying, what are you even doing, Theresa?
Exactly. I love when people say to me, well, how does that work if are my grandparents watching me in the bedroom? And I'm like, really?
Really?
They got more important shit to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. They're good. They're going to let you be. They're fine.
The more you kind of think about that, it's like, why would they spend all their time for that? Why would they? Because,
look, and I get it. Like, people don't, I always like to say people don't understand what I do. I'm the first one to say, look, guys, that is absolutely crazy. There is no way someone can communicate with someone that has died. That's insane. And I struggled, like I told you, for over 5 years, because then I went through, okay, this is amazing. I have this beautiful gift from God. Why me? And then who's going to want to come and see a medium? Who's going to want to talk to the people who have died? Because I had never experienced that yet in my life. And I couldn't understand that. But what I learned from channeling the souls of the departed is that, unfortunately, no matter who we lose, how they die, young or old, or we watch them suffer with a disease or an illness that took away their personality, maybe they died suddenly, tragically. At the end of the day, we lost someone that we... I just lost my train of thought because I felt spirit coming in. I'm like, God damn it! Come on,
can you leave her alone just for a second?
Did you see like I literally
you kind of turned
I turned, right?
Yeah,
it's what happens to me when a shirtless black man walks by me. It's the same.
That's spirit.
It's that spirit for me, Theresa. But we get it.
Oh my God, I totally do. But like, this is what they do. They clear out my own personal thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and they just make me feel what is that they need to relay. They'll make me feel how the person that I'm reading feels. But what people don't understand, these messages are what we need to hear. They talk about personal things that are holding you back from healing.
Yes. Right.
And I think that was the biggest moment for me as a medium. And I was like, you know what? If this is what I was meant to do, then I just want to help people. I want to be able to help people to put one foot in front of the other and move on with their life after the loss of a loved one. And the countless emails and letters that I receive on how people just watching the show, even now listening to the podcast, how it had given them hope and changed their life, or how they look at life so differently now.
Yeah, I think I can just tell from talking to you that you feel like this is what you were born to do, and it's service for you. I know both of us, even though regardless of what we do in life, we're always trying to feel like we can help people,
right?
And there's a need for that because the world is so broken in a way, and anything we can do to put something better out there and to either help people. And so thank you for that.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. It is true. It's all about helping people.
Yeah.
Be nice to people, respect people. I treat spirit like how I treat my kids. If you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all.
Yeah. Now I know we're talking, and obviously we are not our bodies, we are spirit. However, I grew up Catholic as well, and I've been to I always, and maybe just because of the way I grew up, but I don't know if I'm intuitive as poodle, but I am, I think, intuitive, and I've had my own moments.
You are, yeah.
I definitely believe in past lives, and I've had past life dreams, and then go to these places, and I see the place, and I've been there, and also, I know. So I sometimes get feelings when I'm in places. And have you ever been to are there any certain places where sometimes do you even get overwhelmed with the amount of spirit?
I just know things. There was several things. One time I went to Huntsville, USA, where the Gordon family, where they did all the recordings.
Oh yeah.
And I remember going on the tour, and they're taking us through the house, and I was like, "Oh yeah, the candy bar on the right." And the woman looked at me. She's like, "How do you know that?" I'm like, "Oh, I don't know." And and then we went to another part. I go, "This used to be the garage." And the woman looked at me and she goes, "Have you been here before? How did you know this?" And that was the original recording studio. And they had stopped touring that part of it, showing that part in the house. But I know that it was the souls of the grandfather that built this place, that was the garage, the recording studio.
Yeah.
There was another time, I don't know why I'm obsessed with Abe Lincoln.
Oh,
Uh-oh. Did we just have a bonding moment? Something just happened. I just felt this electricity through my body.
I have tears in my eyes.
Oh, you're going to... I went down into the vault. I was down in the vault where everything is they don't let anyone down there. Where, if it loses air, you got to press this button. It sucks all the oxygen out. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So what happened was I was on tour, and a couple of the gentlemen that do my production, they're from Springfield, Illinois. So they arranged for a tour of the Lincoln Museum. Have you ever been there?
I have.
How amazing is it? So we were in one part, and I started talking about things, and the guy looked at me and goes, "How did you know that?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. I must have read it somewhere." And he looked at me. He's like, "That's not in the history books."
Oh, Theresa.
Yeah.
I was a kid. I was 8 years old, and we were walking up there. There was this gravel road, and you walk. And I told my mom, I said, "Oh, Mama, their house is behind the trees." And she's like, "What?" And that's where his log cabin. I think that was the one in Springfield. That was his log cabin was. And then we walked in, and I said, "Mom, I want to go see the checkerboard." And she said, "The checkerboard?" I said, "Behind the house. They play. That's where they play games." And it was there, and there was a knothole where they hid things. And I said, "Oh, that's a knothole." And it was. I knew the whole layout of the house. My mother was completely. So that is no, it's not random, but that is incredible that you bring that up.
And there's no explanation for it, right?
No.
As a kid,
I tell Jake I was Abraham Lincoln. He's like, you weren't. More like Gabraham Twinken.
I know. You were Gabraham Twinken.
That is hilarious.
But of all the places for you to bring up, y'all, I swear, this has not been pre-recorded. No. We have not talked to Theresa. I am not an emotional person too, but Poodle,
I know I cry all the time.
Because when you said it, I felt it.
I felt it.
Yeah. That was insane.
Well, such a connection. But yet I never, in any of my past lives, I've never gone back there. But the one thing I want to tell you, when they brought me down into the vault, there was this necklace, and they had other things down in the vault, and it was on a bust, and it was yellow gold, and it was this lock, and it had. Abe gave that to his wife for an anniversary. And the guy looked at me and he goes, "That's right, he did." And I go, "That's a Tiffany necklace, isn't it?" Now, you think of Tiffany, you think of silver, right? You're not thinking of gold. And he's like, "That's a Tiffany necklace that he gave her for one of their wedding anniversaries."
Wow.
I just say weird things. I just say, and I don't have this conversation about Abe Lincoln with people. It's not a conversation that I typically have,
I think what you're saying, just because now I can tell you from experiencing it, that it is a feeling of knowing. And I feel like what we kind of do in our lives is often, I think the things we regret the most as humans is when we didn't listen to the knowing and did something different. And if we can learn to let that go, like you said, it can develop a knowing in our life.
Absolutely. That I refer to it as our little Jiminy Cricket.
Let your conscience be your guide.
Yes, it's so true. It's so, and I think if we learn to trust that more, like, don't be afraid of it. But here's the thing. We're afraid of what we can't see, what we can't touch, right? Or that the unknown is so scary, right?
Yeah.
Here I am. I'm afraid of the dark, for God's sakes. I'm 53. I still live next door to my parents, and I sleep with a nightlight, okay? And I talk to dead people for a living. So let's talk about this for a second.
This has been.
I think I was Mary Todd Lincoln. I think that's it.
Well,
I do love a big.
Maybe I was Abe.
Yes, and you are crazy like her. So
he's kind of got the hair too.
Yes, true. I have one more question. This has been so fantastic.
It really
the burning
has.
question.
What?
Can we talk about your hair? It is.
I don't know what it is today.
No,
this is my podcast hair.
I'm saying normally.
How long does it take you to fix
You are known for your. What would you call your fabulous drag queen poof? Yeah,
I love that. Thank you for saying that.
No. It is just like we say Long Island medium. I say that hair.
Like, have you ever tried to change it and producer said no?
No. Well, they don't tell me. They just show up with their cameras. You can't produce this. It's so crazy.
I believe that now.
Yeah.
And So anyway, this has been so lovely,
This
Theresa.
has been really
Thank
wonderful.
you so much.
Oh, it's amazing.
Tell us where we can find your podcast, where we can find you at your socials, and tell us about the new season.
Oh my God! Okay, so the new season will be coming back during the 2021, right?
Yeah.
New year, everything to look forward to.
Right.
You can always find on everything on Theresa Caputo. I have a little blue check mark next to everything, so don't be fooled by anybody else out there. If you ever want any questions about me, always go to my website at theresacaputo.com. You can find Hey Spirit anywhere where you listen to podcasts, and maybe you can find me hanging out with these guys one day.
Hey, when we go on live shows, girl, we're coming to your
We're
town.
gonna go.
Yes.
I'll wear my Mary Todd.
Where are you guys from?
I'm from South Carolina, upstate South Carolina, Southern, and he's from Oklahoma.
Southern Oklahoma.
I love Oklahoma.
So yeah, we're country. We're country Southern
country
boys.
I love a country boy.
So do we.
And I
fit right in.
Your next husband needs to be country.
Country boy, yes. Blake Shelton by any chance?
Oh,
someone like a Blake? Come on.
Yes. Oh my.
Blake Shelton, call her.
My cousin goes hunt with him. We live like 40 minutes. Yeah, my cousin. Yeah.
I am obsessed with Blake Shelton and Gwen Stefani. I love them. I could Gwenify myself a little bit.
And I'll have friends that'll like put on Facebook, oh my gosh, I'm in Walmart and I just saw Gwen Stefani, because they're just do things in town like normal people.
But you have to. You have to. I love when people say that to me. They're like, at Target, they're like, what are you doing here? There was like literally a woman that accused me of being a bad impersonator of Theresa Caputo. And I kind of went along with it. And her daughter was so embarrassed. She's like, oh my God. I'm like, she was like yelling at me. How dare you? Theresa is much prettier. And she was like going on. I'm like, oh yeah, okay.
That's how you know you've made it. When people say, is that an impersonator of Theresa?
That's true.
When people say that about me, is that a poodle impersonator? I will know.
You will know.
I will know I've made it.
Well, thank you. So we're going to let our listeners, we have in our show notes, listeners, there is a link to Theresa's podcast, Hey Spirit. Hey Spirit.
Hey Spirit.
So y'all be sure to click on that link. And Theresa, thank you so much.
You are a delight.
You are a delight.
You guys are awesome. And I do watch 90 Day Fiance. So you can have me back on. We could do our own pillow talk.
Oh,
done.
We
could do our own pillow talk. How amazing would that be?
It'll be a lot better than the ones on television now. Okay.
Some of them are funny though. I enjoy them.
Tim and Veronica.
Oh my gosh, girl. Anyway. Sorry, I'm thinking of ideas.
And I don't know if I could say this or not, but somebody from 90 Day Fiance will be on Long Island Medium this season.
A true crossover.
I hope it's someone who loves love. I live in my heart. I live in my heart. I hope it's that. Oh, love. Where the girls at?
I know who you're talking about. Yeah, you're right.
Okay, love's the word. But anyway, Theresa Caputo, you're a delight.
We'll talk to you soon.
We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys. Have an awesome day.
Bye.
Happy Thanksgiving. God bless.
You too.
Bye-bye.